ABC Listen. Podcasts, radio, news, music and more.
Hi News Daily listeners. I'm Danielle O'Neill and I've got a new podcast I want to share with you. It's called Expanse, Uncropped. And at a time where it feels like division is the norm, I've gone back to a story from the 60s that was incredibly divisive to try and see what lessons we can learn. It's a wild story with farmers and UFOs and media pylons. Check it out by following Expanse on the ABC Listen app.
Before we start today's episode, a reminder that our listener survey is still open and we want to hear your thoughts about the show this year, what you like and how we can make it even better. It's short, anonymous, and you can find the link on our website. Just search for ABC News Daily. "26 charges, 9 alleged victims. The broadcaster, Alan Jones, is heading to court next month to defend allegations which include aggravated indecent assault. But why are the charges for the alleged offences between 2001 and 2019 only being laid now? Today, former Media Watch host Jonathan Holmes on the power Alan Jones once wielded and how it wilted away. I'm Sam Hawley on Gadigal land in Sydney. This is ABC News Daily.
Alan Jones, are you a sexual predator? Are you a sexual predator? Alan, do you have any comments to make about the charges?
Alan, what would you like to say today? I'm sure you want to say something to your people.
Jonathan, when Alan Jones left a Sydney police station after charges were laid against him, dressed in a green tracksuit, surrounded by a pack of reporters throwing questions at him, it really was an incredible moment, wasn't it?
It was certainly a power the mighty fallen moment.
Your listeners, the people that support you, anything at all?
You're not usually short of words, Mr. Jones.
Do you have anything to say to your alleged victims?
I think the significant thing, though, is that Alan Jones does not have the power that he used to have. And that's why this could happen. It is inconceivable that it would have happened any time between 30 and 10 years ago. His power was so great in the last few decades that those people would not have dared to do it. And the police, frankly, would not have done it because they wouldn't have believed that a jury would believe Alan Jones rather than these people. And of course, that may still be true. I mean, nothing's been proved. This is still to be tried.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, Alan Jones, through his lawyers, has denied the accusations levelled against him, and they will contest them in court. And let's get to the details of those allegations in a moment. But really what I want to unpack with you now is this issue of power. Because some of the things that Alan Jones said on air were outrageous, they were inflammatory, they were defamatory. And so I'm guessing as host of Media Watch for a number of years, his name would have come up a fair bit on your show.
Although most of the most famous episodes, with the exception of the Julia Gillard one, which I can talk about, happened, I was at Media Watch between 2008 and 2013. A lot of the more famous Alan Jones moments happened later than that. But he loathed Julia Gillard. Part of a pattern, actually, of Alan Jones's relationship with powerful women, which were always a bit problematic. But at one stage, he was so infuriated that he suggested that she and Bob Brown, the then leader of the Greens, should be put in a chaff bag, taken out to sea, and let them swim home.
The woman's off her tree. And quite frankly, they should shove her and Bob Brown in a chaff bag and take them as far out to sea as they can and tell them to swim home.
But actually, one of the main things we took him on was his endless ranting about climate change, which he, like Donald Trump, regarded as a hoax. Of course, the thing is, it had no effect whatsoever, and none of this did. We go back to the famous cash for comment scandal that my predecessor, Richard Ackland at Media Watch in the late 1990s unearthed, where he and John Laws were taking large sums of money from undeclared to their listeners from powerful companies and so on to speak well of them and to speak badly of their rivals. This had no effect whatsoever on Alan's audience. It just grew and grew. That's the source of his power, especially in New South Wales. Way back in the early 90s, had 22% rating, 22% share of the entire radio audience was going to Alan Jones's breakfast show. And he would talk for 3.5 hours, later 4.5 hours, every morning from 5:30 a.m. till 9 or 10, almost without an or an ah, astonishing stamina and astonishing resilience. And his audience just loved him. It's again, similarity to Trump. Didn't matter what you threw at him, he just kept on going.
Yeah, he resonated with this big audience every day for 35 years. He spoke to them, didn't he? He spoke for them, as them, and he rated through the roof.
Absolutely. And what he then did with that power was, again, with astonishing energy. He allegedly slept about 3 hours a night for about 30 years. He would write letters and emails and din ministers and bureaucrats and police chiefs and prime ministers. Every day there would be this stream of demands from Alan Jones. And if your office didn't answer within 24 hours, he would rip you to shreds as incompetent. They were terrified of him because his power was so enormous.
His power outstripped his ratings, Jonathan. I mean, well outstripped his ratings.
He made sure that he used his ratings to exert this enormous pressure on politicians and other people in power.
Yeah, he really disliked Malcolm Turnbull, for instance, didn't he?
Oh, couldn't stand him. I mean, loved Tony Abbott. Couldn't stand Turnbull.
Yes.
They're suggesting, Malcolm, precisely because you have no hope ever of being the leader, you've got to get that into your head, no hope ever, but because of that, you're happy to chuck a few bombs around that might blow up Abbott a bit. That's what they're saying.
Well, that's what you're saying.
And allegedly, you know, I mean, I don't know the detail of this, but he was very instrumental in curtailing Turnbull's prime ministership. You know, even prime ministers of Australia had to take account of this radio host in New South Wales.
He credited his connection with his listeners as the secret to his success. He told Lee Sales on the 7:30 program about that in 2011.
I always say that my listeners are my best researchers. So a lot of my issues are taken from the correspondence. I answer over 100 letters a day and I gain information from them. So I'm not picking up the Daily Telegraph or the Herald or the Australian and saying, what's on the front page, we're going to sort of run with all this.
We need to remember, though, Jonathan, as well, that he'd gone from being a high school teacher at prestigious Sydney schools, being a sports coach, being the coach of the Wallabies, and eventually making his way into this radio career. It's been an interesting path for him.
It's all about this astonishing personal charisma that he had. As a school teacher, I met one of his former pupils at King's Parramatta only a couple of years ago who couldn't speak highly enough of him as a teacher. He just said he was so inspirational. And he did the same with the Wallabies. He was always controversial. There were always people who disliked him. There was always people who particularly disliked his habit of picking favourites amongst the team. But the result that speak for themselves. He was a very fine rugby coach. As one of his critics said, he did everybody's thinking for them. And that's one of the secrets of successful commercial radio.
Well, eventually, Jonathan, in 2020, he resigned from 2GB, he said, for health reasons.
Yeah.
But behind the scenes, there was things going on as well. Of course, the advertisers who prop up commercial radio had sort of had enough. He had told Scott Morrison to shove a sock down the New Zealand Prime Minister's throat.
She's a clown, Jacinda Ardern, a complete clown. I just wonder whether Scott Morrison's going to be fully briefed to shove a sock down the throat. I mean, she is a joke, this woman, an absolute and utter lightweight.
That seemed to be one of the final straws.
That's right. I mean, well, it was just another classic example of Alan Jones's almost pathological dislike of powerful or women who in powerful positions. And a lot of women in Australia just said, we're jack of this, not listeners necessarily, but, other people. This is just not permissible. And the advertisers listened to those women. And it's from that time that he really started to lose that power. And that's, as I say, I think the secret to how Kate McClymont was able to persuade her sources to tell her enough on the record that she could write the story. That story, I think Kate would agree, could not have been written 10 years earlier because she simply would not have been able to find enough people with the courage to stick up to the then hugely powerful Alan Jones.
Yeah, so just to explain that, Kate McClymont is the journalist at the Sydney Morning Herald who broke a story with allegations against Alan Jones in December last year. And she says it took her 4 years of investigation before she could actually get the story to print.
Oh, yeah, I'm not saying it was easy.
Oh, yeah, of course. But she told the ABC 7:30 program that at the time that it was printed, these allegations, Jones had threatened to sue her.
Look, I did put questions to him and the response I received was from his lawyers, basically, threatening a defamation suit, denying the allegations and saying he would sue. He never did sue, but he has maintained that he is innocent of these allegations.
But what did come about, of course we know now, is that the police were working behind the scenes, weren't they?
That's right, and there's no doubt that it was Kate's stories that kicked off the police investigation.
So at 83, Alan Jones is facing very serious charges. They were outlined by the New South Wales Police Assistant Commissioner Michael Fitzgerald.
Those offences include 11 charges of aggravated indecent assault, where the victim was under the authority of the offender, 9 charges related to assault with active indecency, 2 charges of common assault, and 2 charges of sexual touching.
Michael Fitzgerald, he praised their bravery for coming forward to police, which, by the way, Alan Jones' lawyer, Chris Murphy, has taken great issue with.
Well, that's right, because, he's arguing that for the police to champion their witnesses as though they were definitely telling the truth was not a kosher thing to do.
I think it's totally contemptible of the Assistant Commissioner of Police to be praising the witnesses who he might like to call victim. This is a matter for a courtroom, and I believe that he's in terrible breach doing that. But Mr. Jones will be defending this case.
So Alan Jones, Jonathan, has been charged and granted conditional bail. He will appear in court again in about a month's time. The New South Wales Police Commissioner, Karen Webb, says, and this is important, I think, that there's no such thing as a matter that's too old to be investigated.
There is no better time to come forward than now, and you will be listened to, and we will take your matter seriously.
Yes, and it's interesting, actually, that the charges they have laid so far refer only as far back as 2001. Mm. And, of course, again, like the Me Too cases, other people do come forward.
And that's already happened because while we have been speaking, they have laid more charges against Alan Jones relating to a 9th alleged victim. So, yeah, this has some way to play out, I think that's safe to say.
I'm afraid we're going to be listening to this for a very long time.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So, Jonathan, it is remarkable, isn't it, that Alan Jones, a man who wielded so much power for so long, had so many people at his beck and call, is now at the beck and call of the justice system as this plays out.
Yes, it's remarkable. And as Kate McClymont said in the last couple of days, she didn't really expect it. But as I say, I think the important thing is journalists always like to think that they call power to account. The fact is, if you've got enough power, you're extremely hard to call to account by journalists or anyone else. And I think it's significant that this has happened to an old man who's no longer a broadcaster, and I don't think it would have happened earlier, and that's a cause for concern.
Jonathan Holmes presented Media Watch on the ABC from 2008 to 2013. The show goes to air on Monday nights on ABC TV. This episode was produced by Sydney Peed and Anna John. Audio production by Sam Dunn. Our supervising producer is David Cody. I'm Sam Hawley. Don't forget our listener survey, which is on our website. ABC News Daily will be back again tomorrow. Thanks for listening.